What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we have some Detroit Lions updates. The Lions have made some roster moves today. Also, so have the Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to touch on a few of those as well. Plus, we have some Lions trade rumors, as November 2nd is the trade deadline before tomorrow's game against the Eagles. So we got a lot of things to update today. So let's get it started.
Way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, and we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
And welcome everybody to our video. Glad you guys are here. How's everybody doing today? Yeah, I know the Michigan game, it hurt. All right, it still hurts. But I'm moving on. Got to button up the sweatshirt. Move on. Is that a saying? Button up the sweatshirt and move on? No, that's not a saying. Shout out to everybody that was in the chat, though. I know this game's a weird one because we have like half Michigan fans. We probably have more Michigan State fans, if we're being honest, especially that we're in the stream. So it's a little bit different because it's not like we're all rooting against the other team. We're kind of like split. So it's like, okay, this is kind of weird. But it was a great game. So I'll at least give it that. It hurt. It did hurt. But we're moving on. We got the Eagles tomorrow, which is, you know, I'm pumped. It's just Lions football hits different. Sorry. I don't know how else to explain it. It just hits different. But, you know, college football will continue it, right? We still got some big games this year, of course, coming up. But today, we got some Lions news. And I think there's just a lot of things that I want to dive into in this video today. I think I want to start off with the roster moves first, then we'll talk about some of these rumors. We won't go super into detail unless the Lions actually make something happen. Then, of course, we'll break it all down. And also, we have some updates from the Eagles side as well before this game. So let's start with the Lions first, and a couple of these roster moves. Da'Shawn Hand has been activated off of injury reserved. Okay, so this is huge. I really truly did not expect to see this. Even though Dan Campbell said he's probably the closest to coming back, we just haven't seen Da'Shawn Hand in so long. It seems like we never see Da'Shawn Hand on the field. That when I saw this update from the Lions Twitter, I was just like, no way. Like, am I reading this correctly? Da'Shawn Hand has been taken off of injury reserve and he has been put on the 53-man roster. Man, it is a good day. It wasn't like today was the deadline where it was like, man, we had to put him on today. So he may not be healthy. We had to put him on. Today wasn't the deadline. Dan Campbell said it goes into the bye week. So today was not the deadline, but Da'Shawn Hand is back and he could make his debut this season against the Philadelphia Eagles. And that's just super exciting for just him first off, because I know he is just dying to get out there. And just for us fans, I mean, we want to see this guy, right? We want to see this dude. We haven't seen him a ton since we drafted him, but we know how much potential he has. So that is just, it's awesome news. It's awesome news to hear. The Lions had the 2 roster spots open, and one of them now goes to Da'Shawn Hand. I believe they still have a roster spot open. Okay, I think they still do, but one of those goes to Da'Shawn Hand. Now, the deadline was 4 p.m. Eastern time, so that means a guy like Taylor Decker will not be taken off and put on this weekend so he can play. Kevin Strong, he was also not listed. It was just Da'Shawn Hand. So it sounds like only Da'Shawn Hand, but it is a start, and that's exciting news. But yeah, so Matt Nelson should be the starter once again at tackle this week. But that also gives us an update for the Philadelphia side, as they have done this kind of a similar thing. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. Kayvon Wallace, all right, the young safety for the Philadelphia Eagles, has been taken off of injury reserve, and he has been put on their 53-man roster. That safety position dealing with some injuries. Anthony Harris, we know he's listed as doubtful, and we've seen Kayvon Wallace kind of step in and be the starter as the beginning of the season. Rodney McLeod missed time. Then McLeod came back, and then Kayvon Wallace went on IR. Now Kayvon Wallace is back, all right? So this is a big update for them as well. That's good news for him coming off of injury reserve. So just a couple of quick little updates from both sides. We also made some practice squad moves. Shakir Brown, the cornerback from Michigan State, has been released off of the practice squad. It's always possible that he could come back at some point, you know, but for right now, he has been released off of the practice squad. And in his place, we have signed Eric Banks, the outside linebacker / defensive end, the UTSA product, back to the practice squad. So we had him on the 53-man roster. We released him. We opened up a spot, and we just put him right back onto the practice squad. So he's still here with us. We do have some potential good news here. The Detroit Lions have chosen their 2 players to elevate from the practice squad for this week's game. And the 2 players they chose are safety Jalen Elliott and tight end Brock Wright for the 2nd straight week. And the reason I say that I think this is good news is because that is not Nickel Roby-Coleman, the slot cornerback on our practice squad, which likely means that A.J. Parker is healthy for tomorrow's game, who did return to practice on a Friday. They said they were going to have him run around and see how he felt. So it probably means that he's good to go for Sunday's game if they did not elevate Nickel Roby-Coleman from the practice squad to the active roster, because I believe he's only done it once. I don't think he's done it twice yet. I believe he's only done it once. Right, so he still had the eligibility to be elevated. Now, They possibly could sign him to the 53-man roster because I believe they still do have one spot left. I don't know if that's a 4 p.m. Eastern time deadline like the other moves on Saturday as well. But it does seem like AJ Parker is probably good to go, and probably so is Jerry Jacobs. Now, we still have to wait for the inactives tomorrow for guys like Mark Gilbert, who we expect to see on Sunday, it sounds like. I don't think he'll be inactive, but it does seem like it's probably some good news there with the cornerback position. We also have a couple updates from the Eagles side as well, as tight end Richard Rodgers, the former Green Bay Packer, has been elevated off the practice squad for this week's game. We talked about the possibility of, them trying to get a, tight end off of IR because, some of the depth that they're maybe lacking there now. Elevated running back Jordan Howard. That one's not really a surprise. It was kind of told yesterday that he's probably going to be elevated, as Miles Sanders has hit injury reserve. So he'll be out for at least 3 weeks. I know that doesn't affect us after this week, but yeah, that does impact some of those Eagles fans, their number one running back. So he will not play this week. We knew that. But now he has been placed on injury reserve. So that's just a couple of roster updates, both sides for the Lions and for the Eagles. Now, I want to talk about some of these trade rumors. So Albert Breer, I guess, kind of started this like a day ago when he put out this tweet that the Lions and the Saints were both looking for some receiver help. Okay, the Lions and Saints were both discussing looking for some receiver help. Now, he didn't go into specifics on who the Lions may be looking for, but he did give us 4 player names. We don't know if it's, both teams are interested in these 4 guys. Maybe the Saints are interested in a few, Lions are interested in a few. We don't know for sure if this is who the Lions are actually interested in. And again, it's still just a rumor at the end of the day, but Albert Breer put this out that the Saints and Lions were looking for some receiver help. And the 4 names that were on this list include tight end Evan Ingram from the New York Giants, also receiver Darius Slayton from the New York Giants, receiver Andy Isabella from the Arizona Cardinals, we've talked about him a few times, and receiver Devontae Parker from the Miami Dolphins, a potential trade to the Detroit Lions. Now, we talked a lot about Andy Isabella. We did a video kind of with Andy Isabella just at the end, so I won't talk about him too much in this one. And again, I won't go into super detailed, about any of these guys unless the Lions make a trade, then, we'll break it all down, okay? But I have watched a little film on each one of these guys. Nothing super serious, I've done some background, I've watched some film on them, I got some clips, and I do want to talk about them a little bit each individually. Let's start off with the odd man out, I guess, which is the tight end Evan Ingram. All right, this is a guy that was a first-round pick going back to 2017, 6'3", 240. And I know you're hearing tight end, you're like, wait a minute, tight end, right? Why would we want a tight end? We need receiver help. Well, he's kind of like a receiver. I wouldn't say he's Kyle Pitts, but he's like that. He's kind of like a receiver hybrid of a tight end. Kind of gives me some Hunter Bryant vibes, maybe. Maybe if he gets some of those, but he was a first-round pick by the New York Giants. That's just kind of had a lot of inconsistencies. He's had a lot of key and crucial drops or fumbles. And, it's just like one of those guys that a lot of GMs around the league believe he just needs a change of scenery. One GM said, man, I would pick him up in a minute, in a heartbeat, if this guy was available. So the thought is his asking price won't be super high. Reason being is that he's on a contract year. This is the final year of his rookie contract, which means it's not super expensive. We'll get into the contracts at the end, but it is the final year of his rookie contract. And afterwards, they're kind of sarcastically cheering for him. It's how much the Lions, like to utilize their tight ends. Heck, they went 3 tight end sets last week. We saw it with Fells, Brock Wright, and Hockenson. I guess it's understandable why the Lions would be included with this with the Saints. And keep in mind, Dan Campbell's with the Saints. Right, and they like to use their tight ends as well. So it makes sense why these two teams are kind of in the same boat, right? I guess it makes sense why, he kind of just put them both together here. 4'4", 240. Ability has never been an issue for Evan Ingram. I will say that. The guy can get open. He's a very athletic tight end, and he's a class act. Like, that's what I've heard everywhere from all Giants, sources, that this guy's a class act, where he's like, oh, he's a distraction. He's not any of those things. Already this season, in only 5 games played, he does have 20 receptions for 171 yards, no touchdowns, but he's catching 69% of the passes thrown his way. And you have to go back to his rookie season where he had 64 receptions for 722 yards, 6 touchdowns, catching 56% of his passes. He's an athlete. He's a receiving target because you really have to put defensive backs on him. You can't line him up with a linebacker. Usually issues occur. All right, he's a nice over the middle target, and we know that quarterbacks, they love their tight ends if they can get open, but he's a guy that you usually can line out like a slot receiver, like a receiver. You can put him one-on-one on an island, and he can get separation against corners, which is kind of crazy. He's faster than some corners. Just had some crucial drops. He actually had 11 total last season, which is It's a lot. That's how it led tight ends. But so far this season, he only has one, which is much less. This sort of gives me like Eric Ebron vibes, right? Both first-round picks. Ebron's situation was just kind of a mess here. I know he went to Pittsburgh and he had some success the next year. I think he was a Pro Bowler. Heck, Evan Ingram was a Pro Bowler in 2020. I think this also tells you as we go through this, kind of maybe where the Lions are at with the receiver position. Does Tyrell come back? And when does Tyrell come back if they make a trade for a receiver? I mean, how long is this guy going to be out? Because Tyrell's supposed to be the one, and we haven't seen him. Cephas went down, who kind of became the number one receiver. Like I said, we cut Brashad Perriman, who we came into, training camp kind of thinking, yeah, he'll probably be like the X receiver for us. Gonna get to see Trinity Benson again, right? The receiver that we traded for. We saw him and he struggled, and since then we really haven't seen him on the field. So maybe this week they'll give him a chance. Maybe this week they'll be like, hey, we're gonna give you a shot. If it doesn't work, we're gonna pull the trigger on one of these trades, and that's pretty much it, right? I mean, they may put him in that spot this week. It's very possible. Even though we didn't trade a ton to go bring him in, right? But at the same time, you did trade for him, and we really haven't seen him play, because he didn't play well for 1 week, and then they kind of just took him out. They made him inactive the very next week, which is like, oh, snap. The Lions are not happy with their receiver position. We know about the blow-up Dan Campbell had. But it just seems like right now where the Giants are at, record-wise, and also just kind of where they're at with his contract, how it's been going with him throughout the years, that it may be best for him just to be traded away, see what they can get in return. There's been other teams interested. I've heard, like the Packers, because Robert Tunyon's injury. There's been other teams out there. But this is a guy that seemingly won't take a lot in return. Now, one of the biggest things has been his blocking. He didn't come out and was like, oh, he's a very effective blocker that's very reliable. But he's worked a ton on his blocking. And even coming into the season, he's like, it's crazy how much better of a blocker I've become. If the Lions made a trade like this, I would assume that he would be of just a very big receiving weapon. Hawk and Evan Ingram. I mean, that is a scary idea to have those two guys. It's just that the consistency with drops, missing some time. It's just there's a lack of consistency there. And he may just simply need to be in a different spot. And then you move on to, of course, Andy Isabella. Andy Isabella is a guy that I did, like I said, a video on, so I won't go too much into this. Small receiver, only 5'9", UMass, second-round pick. And really what's going on right now there is that he's just not involved. He's like the fifth receiver because they have so much talent. The Cardinals are 7-1. If you saw the Packers game, which was just whack. I'll just say it like that. It was whack. But he's behind AJ Green, DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, and they drafted Rondale Moore this season. So it's like he doesn't really have a role on this team. That's not to say that he's a bad receiver. He just doesn't really have a role. Now, he's a player that's done a lot of things that I think would fit in this offense, and that's why I was first interested. He's a speedster, first off. He can take the top off. He may not be the biggest guy, but he can definitely take the top off. He's played a lot of different positions. Even though he's not the biggest guy, he can play different spots. He's a separation getter. All right, there's no question he can get separation, and he can return punts. He can run screens. He's not the best blocker. He does catch too many passes with his body, which I don't like either, but he definitely gets separation. He could be a quick hitter, or he could be also a guy that could take the top off. And right now, because he's still on his rookie contract, he's not that expensive. I really don't think it would take much to bring this guy in. Cardinals team already traded away picks to go get, Zach Ertz, the tight end. So if they could get those picks back somehow in any kind of fashion, I think they'd be down to do it with a guy that they're not really playing. Now, of course, he's an injury away from getting more reps, but I don't think he's a bad player. I think he can definitely help you. He's a former second-round pick out of UMass that went crazy against Georgia. And I've talked about him a few times, so I won't go too deep into that. He's another guy, though, as well. And then you move down to Darius Slayton, guy that I'm maybe the most interested of these four. I'm going to be honest. Darius Slayton for the Giants. All right, this is a former fifth-round pick he's just outplayed his contract. No question. He's outplayed his rookie deal. He's done some fantastic things early in his career, like the numbers that he's put up. He's a deep threat that gets kind of overlooked, right? And especially this season, he's kind of went down the depth chart because they brought in Kenny G from the Lions. They have Sterling Shepard, who's kind of became like a big target for Daniel Jones this season. They drafted Kadarius Toney. So for him, his role's kind of gotten slimmer, and because of some of the pressure, they haven't been able to get as many shots as they want. But when Anthony Lynn says, hey, we want to get more shots, we got to figure out how to do that, this guy can help you get shots. He can get open. He's a guy that run a sub-4 440, all right, coming out of the draft. He's fast. He gets separation. Doesn't really scare me big time, but he does have already 3 drops this season, which is a lot. So far, he has 12 receptions for 190 yards and a touchdown, but last week, he stepped in because Shepard couldn't play, and when he stepped in, he helped him. I mean, the guy had 5 receptions for 63 yards, and they won the game. He can help you. He can get some space, and what I like about him is the guy is 6'1", 190, only 24 years old, still on his rookie deal, and he can play the X receiver position. He can play X, he can play Z, he could probably line up in the slot, but he can play the X receiver position. The Lions are lacking a little bit of size right now. He's not a Denzel Mims, he's not Tyrell, he's not 6'4", but he does give you a little bit more size to that group. So he's an interesting name. And then finally, you wrap it up with Devontae Parker, a guy that Dan Campbell has connections with going back to 2015 when he took over as the interim head coach with Miami. Devontae Parker, who was a first-round pick, maybe the most talented receiver on here. I mean, the guy got signed to an extension, which is, he has a pretty nice deal going on right now. So he's actually either the most or second most expensive. I think he's the most expensive receiver on here if you go through it. But he's got some size, 6'3", 219. All right, he's a first-round pick because he didn't have blazing speed. He wasn't the most shifty receiver. Great feel for the receiver position, his body control. He makes some highlight plays. He just finds a way to get open. He sits down in zones, and that would rack up tons of stats for the Miami Dolphins. I mean, you just go back a couple years ago to 2019, the guy had 72 receptions for over 1,200 yards. Last season, 63 for 739. So far this season, the guy's only played in 4 games, and he has 17 receptions on 32 targets for 242 yards and a touchdown. 2 words I would use to describe him is, number one, he's creative, right? When a play breaks down, he's trying to get open. He's a guy that makes some crazy catches where you don't really expect him to be. Also, I would say that he is very productive. He's kind of a productive king. You can kind of use him however you want. Deep threats underneath, behind the line of scrimmage. He's extremely productive. He's a volume type of player. Now, he does have a couple of drops. I don't like that. He had a couple in the same game. But at the same time, then he'll make some catches where you're just like, dang, that was spectacular. Like, he's a volume type of pass catcher that can kind of do whatever you need him to do. Now, he's had to deal with some injuries, which has forced him to miss some time. Hamstring injury, tie that with a shoulder injury, but he can definitely play. He's one of the older guys on his list. He's already 28 years old because he's not on that rookie contract anymore. But he may be the most talented player on this list, possibly. I don't know for sure, maybe. All right, really have to dive into the film if the Lions make a move like this. But I think also when you pair that connection with Dan Campbell, it makes it interesting. Now, looking at these 4 guys' contract, Devontae Parker is the most expensive. This season, his base salary is $7.75 million, which is pretty expensive considering the Lions are in like $2 to $3 million range right now in cap space, according to Over the Cap. So they would have to make some things happen to take on that kind of contract. All right, the next year it's 5.6 base, and then the year after that, 2023, it's $5.7 million base salary. His cap hit for this season is $12 million, but some of that's guaranteed, some of his bonuses, things like that. So he's the most expensive. His contract goes through being 30 years old. He's 28. It goes through 30 years old. But he is maybe the most talented, maybe. But at the same time, I don't know if this is the kind of option that the Lions would like the most. He also may take the most to bring him in. They bring in Jalen Waddle. They also brought in Will Fuller, so it's kind of like, all right, they don't really need him. They have a guy like Waddle who's stepped up big time. They have Fuller, so it's like, okay, we don't really need to have this kind of contract, plus we're not good right now anyway. So I guess I get it. But I don't necessarily know if this would be the Lions' top option, just because I think maybe what it would take to get him, and he's going to have a higher contract, so you'd probably have to make some things happen. I don't know if this one makes the most sense for the Lions. The next guy, Evan Ingram, this is the last year of his deal, but it's still $6 million base contract for the season. Now, there's no guarantees this season on his contract. It is the final year of his deal. The Lions may have to make a few tweaks to bring in this type of contract right now, and he is a tight end. Like, he's not a pure receiver. He can play like a receiver, but he helps him because he's just athletic. He's a guy that can get the ball. Tight end screens, he's dangerous in the flats. He can make guys miss. He's not maybe the best blocker, but at the same time, you could have him and Hawk on the field at the same time, and, they could do some things. And they like their tight end, so they could probably cause some havoc in the back end, having a really nice tight end set, that's for sure. But him being on the last year of his deal, it's kind of like a rental, so I don't know if the Lions would want to do that. Now, if they liked him, of course, they could just extend him. But I don't know if the Lions would want to do that because there's no guarantee he'd play well here and they want to bring him into next year. So that's another one that's kind of interesting. This one's really interesting to me is Darius Slayton because the guy has 2 years left of his deal. He's only got $850,000 base salary this year. That's because he was a 5th-round pick. And you have a next year, too, for $950K. So you could bring him in. Probably won't take, if it doesn't take a whole lot to get him, if you brought in Darius Slayton, right, and you like him, great. This is not just, it's helping. It's not like, no, this is a piece that helps you this year and next year and possibly down the road because you can resign him after 2022. So he's cheap for the next 2 seasons. I like that. If it doesn't work out, really doesn't cost you a ton to move on for him. Because, yeah, you used the pick. Maybe you could try to trade him away after a season on the last year of his deal, see if you could get anything if he finishes the year strong. But even if you had to cut him, it's not like it's like, we got all this guarantee money locked up on him. We're really taking a lot of dead cap here. No, he's on his rookie deal and it's not expensive. So for me, this one makes a lot of sense financially, what he's done. I don't know if it would take a ton to bring him in. And of course, Andy Isabella's sort of in the same boat. He's only got $915,000 base salary this season and just over $1 million next season. So neither of those 2 players are that expensive. But if I had to say the guy that I'm really interested of this list, it's probably Darius Slayton. I'm really interested in Darius Slayton of this list because you want to talk about, hey, Anthony Lynn, we're trying to figure out how do we get shots. Slayton can give you shots, but he can also play as an underneath target for you. He just has to make sure that, obviously he's catching the ball. Like, there's a reason all these guys are being rumored to being traded. Slayton, to me, is a really solid player that's outplayed the contract that really doesn't have as big as a risk as maybe a Devontae Parker could possibly have. The risk that Parker could bring with him because you're just investing more possibly in picks and money, right? Where if it doesn't work out, you could have a little bit more risk there. Evan Ingram's an interesting one, but I don't know if the Lions would do that for a guy that's on the last year of his deal. He's a tight end, and he may still have to make some things financially work out there. there. And plus, you do have Hawk, and Hawk's not going to lose reps, right? And you have Fells, and they like Brock Wright. So I don't know if that would make a ton of sense. Plus, he's maybe not a premier blocker still. Isabella's always still interesting to me, but Slayton gives you more size. So that one could be interesting because he's more of a guy that can play X and Z at a higher level, maybe more consistently than Isabella, who I think can do it, but he's the same size as Khalif. So if you want a little bit more size, a guy that can mix it up, a guy that you think can win one-on-ones, get some space, I really like the idea of Slayton. Parker might be the most talented. Evan Ingram's probably one of the most interesting, but I really think Slayton may make the most sense of this entire list. Anyways, though, we'll see if the Lions do some. Who knows? November 2nd's the deadline, but it came up in a rumor, so I thought we'd at least talk about it. If we make a trade, we'll dive all into it. But I don't think we'll be making anything before Sunday's game. Brad Holmes is on this. After this game, it's Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So the Lions would still have time to make something happen into their bye week, and then they could try to get him acclimated with an extra week to prep. We'll see. We will see if it happens. But you got to remember, this is not a trade for just, oh, we're trying to win now. It's also, one, you got to learn how to win. We did a whole video on this. You guys will check it out. You got to learn what the issue is. If you think that you can't evaluate it fairly because your receiver needs help, then you get a receiver, right? You get someone to figure it out. Not necessarily you saying you go overboard and you do all this to go get Odell and you're like, all right, let's do what we can do. No. But if you bring him in and it helps the offense gets better and you can more fairly evaluate Goff, then you at least know, okay, we need this offseason, okay? This guy can help us this offseason. This is how we feel about Goff. Because if you get through the year and you didn't feel like you could fairly evaluate, these aren't my words, these are Dan Campbell's words, the quarterback position, then what was this year really for? All right. I mean, you really didn't help yourself this year at all in evaluating Jared Goff. So, that may be something that happens. We'll see, though. It's definitely very possible, but it would probably happen after tomorrow game, after the game. Probably not anything happening today or tomorrow, maybe Monday or Tuesday. And a win could possibly sway them one way or another. There always is a chance of them selling, too. There's certain players that I think that they could move on from. And Nick Williams, one I had kind of high up there just because I think they could get value in return. But that's a whole nother discussion. Anyways, I'm going to leave it here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you, Prop, for watching. And I'm out.